Hello, my name is Fatima, and today I'm going to unpack a standard. I chose the standard RL.2.2 Recount stories, including fables and folktales, from diverse cultures and determine the central message, lesson, or moral. And so, the big idea behind this message is for students to be able to find the central message or the lesson in each story. And I chose this one because it's I find it to be the most interesting standard where students are required to analyze and think about the problem and the lesson, and it's not always very obvious. And so I like taking students through that process um, of analyzing the problem, the solution, and really looking at the characters and how the characters respond in order to find the central message or the lesson. Nouns in this standard are the stories, the diverse cultures, and of course the central message. And verbs are recounting and determining. And so the way that we do that in this unit um, is through a unit called How Characters Respond to Challenges. And so what we do is that we start out by reading several versions of the Cinderella story. And that sounds simple, but really it's versions of the Cinderella story from different cultures. So there's one that looks at the Cinderella story, which is in like kind of in a Native American setting, where the main character works the way Cinderella does and is not appreciated and is mistreated. And then we also read a story that has a Cinderella type sequence where the main character does live in a home with her stepmother and is treated as a slave and kind of works, similar to the original Cinderella story. Um, but she lives in the jungle and she has a book of kind of magic, and it's more like healing. And so she's learning, she teaches herself to read. And so they both have like a Cinderella-esque um, twist to them where the main character faces a challenge to be honest or to be kind. And in the end, the person with the good character, the main character usually, wins or succeeds because they are kind, because they are honest. Activities that we use to help students meet the standard is, of course, we read the story and we go through analyzing it in several ways. First, we sequence the story. And so to do that and make it engaging, we create a poster where they're demonstrating what happened in the beginning, what happened in the middle, next, and in the end. And then the next activity that we do is they create a graphic novel with the structure of the story. So, what was the setting? Who were the characters? We talk about the um, different character traits. So, and not just of the main character that was honest and kind, but the other characters in each story. How were they? How did they treat, lesser beings? How, for example, in one of them, the Cinderella encounters a wounded animal. How did she treat that wounded animal? How did the other characters treat other um, animals in the story? The same thing with the Cinderella from the Native American point of view. She is honest, even if it means she can win something, she always tells the truth versus the other characters who don't. So breaking down the structure of the story, talking about the problem, how the characters respond to the problem, what were what happened to the character that lied, what happened to the character that was honest. We go through that whole sequence in order to help the students find the central message and the lesson. And a lot of times, um, students can kind of look at the story at the end and be like, oh, the lesson was this, was be nice. Yes, but it's bigger than that. And so to help them really look at the story and think about it critically, that's really where we meet the standard. Because when we assess them, um, during all these activities, we're asking questions, we're answering questions in a whole group, we're writing notes. I work with them in a small group for my students with limited literary skills. We might read a section of the story together while everybody else reads it independently. And we're asking and answering questions constantly, like, well, what does that mean? And how did they feel? And, um, you know, is there a time when you encountered something like this? Or how do you think about the way they responded? And that gives me an idea of if they're understanding, if they're able to analyze this, do they need some more help? You know, sometimes students, especially some of the stories, the character traits are kind of, you have to really dig for them. There's not a lot of detail, but we talk about them, and we like might even chart out the character traits and compare and contrast the different characters to help students really see, like, this person really um, went out of their way to be honest, or this person really, you know, you can see here, 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 and here in the text that they just were not a very kind person, or they just were not going to be um, honest, or they were not going to be hardworking. And then this helps them because when we do our summative assessment for this standard specifically, there's a weekly assessment at the end of each week. Um, this unit is broken up into 3 weeks. So at the end of the first and second week, they have a weekly assessment where they have to read a story and they have to respond to questions about the central message, about the character traits, about the structure of the story. And that really, going through the sequence like that in the classroom helps them to think independently and really be able to answer the questions in the assessments. And then we have a summative assessment at the end of the unit where they have 2 stories and they're answering similar questions about the structure, about the central message. And so if they're able to demonstrate the skills before we do the assessments, right, where they're able to recount the story events, where they're able to describe, you know, the beginning, middle, and end, talk to me about how each character, how they responded, what was the problem, what did each character learn to help find the central message. Then by the time that we do the assessments, they're able to look at those and, you know, usually easily find the central message from those summative assessment, the stories that they're reading in the summative assessments. So to me, this is a fun unit. Students really enjoy it, but it does require, it's kind of like a sequence of the unit to really help them unpack that standard, to really help them be able to um, determine the central message. And so that's why I chose this standard as a standard to unpack. I think students really enjoy it. I think by the end of the unit, they really can determine the central message. They really can figure out the moral or the lesson in each one of the stories because they've learned how to, you know, recount, retell, and dissect the structure of each story. So thank you very much.